Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. This is Stephanie Roothouse. I'm the Director of Customer Marketing and Communications at Replicon. I'm joined today by my colleague Scott Bales, who's the Director of Solutions Engineering. And on behalf of Replicon, we'd like to both thank you so much for being a customer and also for spending the time to learn a little bit more about best practices for integrating Replicon with your business applications. Throughout the 30-minute broadcast, we'll have you on mute. We will do a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit any questions you may have through that Q&A text box that you should see on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll obviously queue you, but anytime you'd like to just submit those, that's fine as well. So why don't we just dive right into a poll question to set the context for the conversation. What are you integrating Replicon with today if you are integrating Replicon? So you have an option on your right-hand side of selecting one or more of the following. The first is HRIS, the second is payroll finance, the third is project management, the fourth is other, and the fifth is nothing. So feel free to select the most appropriate choices for you. Scott, what do you predict we'll see today in terms of results?
I think we're going to see a couple of strong responses. One is going to be to payroll and finance. As long as we've been tracking time, we've been pushing that time out to payroll to pay employees. And then obviously the nature of today's session means that nothing is probably going to be one of them as well, because that's why people are here today, to understand what's possible.
Okay, well, let's see what the results are. We'll share them with you. You should see them now. So to your point, Scott, payroll did rank very high. And the reason why we're seeing more than 100% is because those that attend can select more than one option. But 50% have selected payroll finance. Interestingly enough, project management ranks pretty high as well.
And that's not surprising. Obviously, customers in our time bill, time cost space are also leveraging that integration. We do have out-of-the-box integration, and we'll talk to that in a little bit. Now, we've talked about and we've responded to a poll speaking to what types of integrations you're currently doing or not doing. And now, what I want to take some time to, before we dive into customer examples of what's possible from an integration perspective, is why you may want to integrate with the Replicon solution. Obviously, the first reason is to automate your processes. Okay, you are capturing time within the Replicon solution towards perhaps it's just activities or pay codes. Maybe it's projects. But that time capture really is going to serve you well in other applications, whether it's paying employees, whether it's doing some project costing in a financial system. But we want to automate that data leaving Replicon and going out to other systems, so you can benefit from that data elsewhere. Plus, you want to automate the process of bringing it in, because that's going to reduce your data entry. If it's manually entered in external systems or brought into Replicon, there's going to be a chance of having errors, and we want to reduce those errors and automate that process. And once it's automated and we take away that manual data capture mechanism, that's going to increase productivity, because it's going to free up the resources you're using today that are manually entering that data and give them the ability to potentially contribute on more revenue generating tasks, let them focus on their core business, and free them up from having to do all that manual time entry. The other point that I want to make here with regard to integration is ensuring that data is synchronized in multiple systems. Some of you might say, well, you know what, I'm not concerned with integration. I have that data elsewhere, and I don't need to integrate it with Replicon. Well, we've all sat around a boardroom table and have one person give one set of metrics and another give a completely different set, because you're both reading from different systems. Synchronizing that data across the organization means that everybody's reading from the same playbook, everybody has the same evidence in front of them when you're making business decisions. So you want to make sure that that data is synchronized as much as possible across the systems that you're using in your organization. Okay. Now, what I want to do is we've seen some of the reasons why you may want to explore integration with Replicon. Now what we're going to take a look at are some customer examples and how they've leveraged the Replicon platform integrating with their existing investments. Now the examples that we're going to cover incorporate a combination of very complex to out-of-the-box integrations, and in some cases Replicon was involved from a professional services standpoint, and others the customers are able to do this all on their own, and we can get into that in more detail if you have questions after we go through the customer examples. The first example that I'll bring up is integration with HRIS. This is just Human Resourcing Information System, and this is the system that holds all of your user data. Oftentimes it's going to hold pay and compensation data along with user accreditations, potentially benefits information. And this system is it's a natural integration point because all of the users that are in this system are likely going to be capturing time within Replicon. So bringing that information over into Replicon is important to a lot of customers, and it was important to Expedia. Expedia is leveraging our Time Attend solution to capture time for their call center workforce, and that's internationally. Now the nature of that workforce means that turnover is more frequent than it may be in other areas of their organization. So they were very sensitive to the fact that any user creation that they had to do in Replicon was going to be increased because they did see some turnover in this role. So what they wanted to ensure is a system that could accommodate that. And what we did was we produced a real-time integration with their HRIS. Working with Expedia, we were able to take a call so that when a user is added in their HRIS system, a call is made to Replicon to produce that same user in our system. And not only is the user produced, but their permissions are assigned and their access is also determined based on that call. And that's all exposed through the API interface that you could leverage if you needed to do a similar type of integration. Of course, one of the most popular integration points that we deal with on a regular basis, and we've been dealing with it for over a decade, is payroll. Capturing of time is generally the first step of a two-step process in paying your employees. So whether we're integrating with your local finance package, QuickBooks, MyOb, whether it's a payroll provider like ADP or Ceridian from an outsourced payroll perspective, the Replicon system has often been used to integrate with those platforms. The customer we're going to talk about here is GeoDigital. They're a geographical and geophysical data company, and their growth has really been through acquisition. So they wanted a quick-to-implement product that they could push out to their new acquisitions and quickly leverage the time capture and, of course, the payroll mechanism available if an integration was in place. Now the biggest challenge there was not only a quick-to-deploy system, but also a system that could support multiple payroll vendors, and Replicon did that for them. Not only are we producing a feed to ADP, but also to Paychex for them and dividing the user base so they can have all of their users in a single system, still provide multiple payroll outputs to different vendors, and all through integration with Replicon. So in that case, we're using a hybrid solution. We're pulling that data out through the API and producing a flat file, and then they are taking that flat file and importing it into their payroll vendor's interface. Okay. And now in that case, again, our professional services team is working to produce that file for them, but there's nothing preventing you from doing it if you have the development resources in place to leverage the API. Next, we're going to talk about project integration, and it's obvious that the attendees on this call are already leveraging this in some fashion. The same as payroll and HRIS, we can also bring in or export project information through the API. But the project integration we're going to talk about is actually done with something out of the box. This was completely hands-free from a Replicon perspective. BankTech came to us loving our time bill solution and said, you know what, we really want to roll this out, but we've got a strong Microsoft project subset inside of our user base who doesn't want to use Replicon to do their project tracking. They're very happy with Microsoft Project. They've been using it for years. How can you help us? And for them it was very easy because we simply said, here, give them this project integration tool. It was something that those users that needed it could install locally. It synchronizes projects on their schedule. Whenever they're ready to synchronize, they can do so. And they can even define their own mappings as well. So they can always have their projects in sync with Replicon. And then additionally, you can take the time out of Replicon and push that back to Microsoft Project. Okay. The last integration that I want to touch on here is integration with a finance system. And finance integrations can often be some of the more complex. The one that I'm going to speak to here with Hawaii Gas was an example of one of those very complex integrations that happened over the course of weeks, working very closely with our professional services team. And one of the reasons for that complexity is it was a two-way integration. So we were bringing pay code information and project information out of Dynamics GP, and we were doing that through the eConnect interface. That's an API that is provided for the Great Plains product. We're bringing that information out and into Replicon on a regular basis. And then we were pushing that data from Replicon back into Great Plains with time associated with it. So the projects and pay codes would come over, and then we'd push back into Great Plains, not just to payroll, but to the project costing module, so that they're able to do all of their financial work around the time that is captured with the Replicon tool. Again, a real-time integration, so there's no files being exchanged here. It's all being provided through web service calls and through the API, so there's no manual intervention. And again, it just really shows the complexity that's possible with regard to integrating with Replicon and leveraging our API. Now, those are the examples of those are the customer examples of integrations we've done, and there's reasons why Replicon integrations are successful, and perhaps why other integrations with other vendors aren't. You may be told to shy away from integration with other solutions, but we like to think that there's very specific reasons why ours are successful. One of them is backward compatibility. So as our system is upgraded in the back end, the interface and that API doesn't change. It maintains backwards compatibility, and we're forced to because our mobile applications all use that same interface, and if we broke it, it would mean every mobile user out there, hundreds of thousands of mobile users, would essentially lose connectivity immediately. So we're very careful to maintain that backward compatibility, and that interface is the same one that we would reference for your integrations. Configurable interfaces. So these are not written in stone. Your integrations, although there may be specific integrations written for you, they're not written with custom code. So that interface, that API interface that you're leveraging, is the same interface as everybody else. So if you need to change something, it's easy to do so. It doesn't mean a rewrite of the whole interface. It just means a small tweak to take advantage of additional attributes or maybe new functionality within Replicon that you're wanting to use. Last is the fact that it's a service-oriented architecture, and all that means is that within our tool, the modules communicating with each other, so the project module communicating with the user module, communicating with the timesheet module, all of that internal communication happens through service calls. And that's a benefit to you because those service calls are the same service calls you're going to make through the API. So all of the automated testing that we're doing on a regular basis, all of the scalability that we put into place to ensure performance is there. All of those things benefit you because you're making the same service calls externally as we're making internally to the application. So that's an important point that that I wanted to make there. Okay.